we're going to talk about the new AI features in Zoho Creator. Some of these, you will be happy to know, are branded as AI features and not as Zia features, and some of them are branded as Zia. So, just a real quick primer before we get started. How does AI work? So most of the AI features that we're talking about in Zoho Creator work on this pretty simple idea of model training. And so basically the way that it's set up is you can feed a bunch of data into the machine. The machine has some kind of like base algorithm or base formula set up, which is usually created by a programmer or a person who makes an assumption about what some kind of useful formula could be to make a prediction. But then, as that data is fed in, that algorithm can get modified over time. And so eventually, we can determine what the hyperparameters are for making a prediction. So if I want to predict who is going to win the Super Bowl this year, I could maybe feed in a bunch of data about which teams have been successful in the past, which players are on which teams, et cetera, and I could make some kind of like base algorithm, and then eventually I could determine which factors are actually useful in predicting who is going to win the Super Bowl. So maybe whoever won it last year could be like one parameter that would be useful, or whoever has the best quarterback who throws the longest amount of passes each year. All of those things could end up being parameters that influence our end result. And so then at the end, the computer spits out a model, which is just basically a formula which is useful for making some very specific type of prediction. And it's using all of the data that we fed it in order to do that. So that is all I can tell you about AI. So the first thing I want to show you actually is a feature that does already exist in Creator and you could use today, which is called Zia Import. And so Zia Import is a really nice feature to have when you're importing like spreadsheets of data into your Zoho Creator application. And so Zia Import is designed to take an intelligent look at all of the information that you're pulling into your Creator application, and then it tries to help you clean that data up and fix any inconsistencies in it. It tries to maybe auto-detect, hey, you put in something in one column that looks kind of like an address, maybe I will just automatically set that to an address field. Or you put in something that looks like a name, I'm just automatically going to set this to create a name field in your Creator app now. And so the import has actually gotten a lot more powerful than it used to be. So if you haven't used the spreadsheet import in Creator recently, there's a whole bunch of new stuff there. So let's take a look at how that works. So here I just have a example application, and I am going to create a new form in my application, and I'm going to do it by importing a spreadsheet. And then just to show you what we're working with here, we have a spreadsheet, just a simple CSV file sitting over here on our desktop. So when we look at this data, which is just pretty straightforward information, names, phone numbers, address information, we see that there's going to be a few things that are issues if we're importing this into an application. So first thing, phone numbers. Some people, we have it formatted with like parentheses around the area code. Some of them have like hyphens, and so there's different formats in the phone numbers. And so that's one issue that could potentially come up. Another issue could be like the state field here. So a bunch of them just say CA, but some of them, they wrote out California. So that's also inconsistent. Or country, we could have United States, we could have U.S.A, we could have USA. Some of them don't even have anything, but we know that it's in the US because it's in California. So there's all kinds of weird inconsistencies in our information here. And so if we're trying to import that data into an application, that could cause all kinds of issues that we just don't want to deal with. It makes our data more difficult to search through. It makes it harder to use. It makes it harder to work with when we're scripting. And it makes it harder to generate useful reports, because then if we generate a report every time we're looking at like maybe our customers by state, what if it's treating the people who wrote out California and the people who wrote CA as different things, or the people who wrote USA and United States as different values. And so it's actually not giving us the complete picture. So that's the kind of thing that Zia Import excels at helping us with. So I'm just going to choose to upload from my computer, and then I will choose that CSV file. And this is what Zia Import looks like. So it shows you a preview of your data. And first thing we notice is that it has actually correctly identified the first name and last name fields and split those into the new Zoho Creator name field. So when you use a name field in Creator, it automatically has like a kind of like a subfield situation with the first and last name, and it's auto-detected that and figured that out for us. And so the way that it does that is we just trained Zia with a huge data set of information where we just said, here's a bunch of words, here's a bunch of cells from different spreadsheets. These ones are all names. These other ones are not names. And so over time, Zia built a model and was able to learn this looks like a name. And it was also able to learn that these things look like a phone number. So we see the little phone icon here in our phone column. And so it's auto-detected that this should be a phone field. So far, pretty cool. But what if we want to make all of those phone numbers one consistent format? So I can click this little drop down here on the phone column, and I can come over to refine data, and it gives me a whole bunch of options for how I want to refine this data. So there's things like, filling in the missing values. We just have a couple cells that are empty. I could fix inconsistent spellings. But we also have added one specifically for phone numbers, which is called standardize phone numbers. So I can just click on that, and then it opens up this little window on the right side here. And so it's telling me, okay, how do you want to do the country code? So I can choose to just add one country calling code. Like if I know all of these phone numbers are from the United States, I could just say, yeah, they're all from the US. Or if they're all from some other country, I could just choose that here. The other option I have, though, is I could add the country code from a column, too. So if we have a country column, and we have a bunch of phone numbers that could be from any number of countries, we can automatically say, okay, you wrote USA, we actually know the country code for that, and so we can automatically set the country code on the phone number to +1. So I will just set these all to United States for now, and we see that they're now all reformatted to match the creator format. And so that makes that information much easier to work with. So now let's take a look at the state issue here. So we have California, we have CA. How are we going to deal with that issue? So one thing we could do is we could just click on the little drop down again, come over to refine data, and then click fix inconsistent spellings. And so here it found a couple of clusters. So it found some words that look very similar, but actually what I've realized is that it's not just that we have CA and California, but some people, or at least one person, was dyslexic, and they misspelled California, right? So that's something that we could have very easily missed. They just misplaced an I. You could easily just gloss over that. And so if we hadn't done the fix inconsistent spellings, we might have completely missed that people had actually written two different values in there. So all I have to do then is hit replace, and then I have to choose which value I actually want to replace it with. So it looks like it already has the right one. So I can do that. And so it tells me one cell was replaced, and so we fixed that misspelling there. But the other thing that we could do is, we don't want to have some of these that are abbreviations and some of these which say California. So I could just do this explore and edit option from that list of things that we can do. And then I can come in here and it tells me, okay, these are all the values I've found in this column. So there's 21 CAs and there's 5 Californias. And so if I want to just edit all of the CAs, all I have to do is click edit, change this to California, and hit enter. And now it updates and it tells me all 26 say California. So we cleaned that up pretty quickly. For the country field, we could, of course, come in and do the same thing. So first thing I want to do is I noticed there was some missing values where we hadn't entered anything in there. So I can fix that real quick. And it gives me a few different options. So one is I could fill with the most occurring value. So that's kind of useful because I know these are all addresses in the United States. I could also just handwrite like United States if I wanted, or I could fill with the value of the previous cell, which can be useful some of the time. Okay, so now we filled in all of those, and then if I wanted to make those more consistent, I could do the fix inconsistent spellings, and here we see it finds two clusters. So there's like the abbreviation version, and there's the written out version, and 3 people just decided to disrespect the homeland and write it all lowercase there. So if we wanted to fix that, it's already going to replace it with the capitalized version, and then I could replace all of the abbreviations with the written version. So there we go. Now all of our data looks very clean, very consistent. Okay, so the other thing that is really nice about Zia Import is that Creator has some of these fields now, like the address field, where you drag that onto your form, and it automatically just breaks that down and gives you a field for like street address, zip code, city, country. It breaks it into all those different parts. And so I can account for this when I'm importing my spreadsheet, because right now I can see that, like for street, for instance, if I click on this, it tells me what type of field it's going to import that into. And I don't want to put it in a single line field. I want to put it in an address field so I can use that to generate some of my map-based reports. So I could come in here and just change this out and select address. And then if I keep scrolling down here, it shows me all of the parts of the address field. And so I don't have an address line 2, but I do have like a city, which was also going to be a single line, and I have a state, and I have a zip code, which I can put into postal, and I have a country. And now we see that up at the top here, it's putting this one, I'll rename this to address, make it a little clearer, has this one address field which has each one of these parts going into the correct subfield of our address. And so importing data into Creator has gotten a heck of a lot easier. So there's also a find and replace, which has been added, so pretty straightforward. I think we all get how that works. So if you have some kind of inconsistent data you can't fix any other way, you can just always resort to that. All right, so then all I'd have to do is hit create, and then remember, because I'm importing this to build a form, it's actually going to take all of these fields which we just set up, add those onto a form, and import this data into my Creator application. So it takes a moment, tells me that was all successful, and then I can even click on this if I wanted to see if there had been any failures. I could see how many successes and failures there were. And then I could hit access this application. And if I want to just go into the live mode, I guess, that might be a little easier to see. You see these are the fields it has created, and also there's the report with all of our beautiful data formatted the way we want it to. All right, so one other thing that I want to show you with Zia Import is what happens if we don't have a spreadsheet set up in such a way that everything is neatly broken down into the street address and the city and the postal code. Is there any way that Zia can deal with that kind of information? So we've also built in an address parsing engine into the Zia import. So let's take a look at that. So I will do a new import just to show you how this works. And I will choose a different spreadsheet this time. And so this one, it just has all of the addresses. This is a simple spreadsheet with like 5 addresses, but they are all just in one column. So we don't have this data broken down really granularly. So I could open that up. And then we see that it has actually detected that this is an address field. And so it's already breaking this, it's importing this into an address field. But what we actually want to do is we can click on this link here, and it says address subfield mapping. And so we can click here to split this up across the different columns. And right away, it automatically separates out the street address, the city, the state, the postal code. And so it broke all of that down automatically for us. And that was built using machine learning. So you will be seeing those kinds of features included in more and more Zoho applications that offer a spreadsheet import. All right, so the rest of this session is going to be about stuff that is coming soon. So these are things that are not in your creator accounts just yet, but you will be seeing them in the near future. So the first big category of update that I want to talk about is the AI fields. So AI fields are fields that you will see when you're in the form builder, and we have added 5 of them. So let's break these down. So a normal field, all the ones that you're used to seeing, are just used for collecting information. The idea behind an AI field is that it extracts some extra context from the information that people are entering into your normal fields. So the first example I could give you is the prediction field. And so the prediction field takes a look at all of the data that has been entered into your form, and then you can say, hey, I want to predict the value of field A based off of a bunch of other factors that I'm entering into this form. So what's an example? Maybe I could predict the due date of a task based on what client is for, or what the name of the task is, or which person is working on it. Or I could predict the lifetime of a part in some kind of like manufacturing system based off of a bunch of other factors. I could predict the likelihood that a deal will be closed if I've built some kind of custom CRM based off of what information I'm entering about that deal, such as, I don't know, like what item I'm trying to sell someone, what price it's being offered at, etc., etc. And so Zia can learn to make those predictions automatically. So I didn't make the best demo for this one. It's a little simple, but I was searching around for data sets the other night, and I was like, man, what could I demo with people? And so I live in Austin, Texas, and I used to live in California. And so one thing that you'll notice, this is a bunch of weather data from Austin, Texas. We look at the high temperature. It usually is 3 digits during the summer, and it's usually really, 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 really hot in Austin, Texas. And so I hate it. And so I thought maybe I could do something interesting with this. And I messed around, and I didn't make anything super interesting, and I'm sorry. But I did create one example where, what if I just put in the air pressure, and then I predict how much precipitation will happen. So for instance, if there's low pressure, 29.5 inches, then based on the data of the last few years of Austin weather, when there's a low pressure system, then there's likely a chance that we will get 0.39 inches of rain, right? If the pressure is higher, maybe 30.1, it'll automatically look at my data and it'll go, okay, so on a higher pressure day, only 0.14 inches of rain on average. So there's a correlation between the pressure and the rain, because that's how storms work. I don't understand weather, but that was my example. But let's take a look at how I set this up, because that might be a little more interesting to you guys. So to create this prediction, first of all, I just want to show you, I had hecka data in here, which I just found on the internet. Tons and tons of data. So that was my starting point. So I imported all of that, and I created a form. And then if I scroll down on this form builder to the bottom, these are where all of the AI fields are going to live. And so I just dragged on a prediction field, and then it gives me this little pop-up window. So I can name my field, so I'll call it predicted rainfall, and I hit next. and then I choose a target field. So this is just saying which of the fields already on this form do I want to make a prediction for. So I'll choose the precipitation option, and then I get to choose the supporting fields. So this is basically like those hyperparameters I was talking about earlier. So we have a bunch of data over time for all of these different fields, like the humidity, the temperature, etc. But I found that the strongest correlation was actually with the pressure, which is why I ended up choosing that one. And so I'm going to predict the rainfall based off of the air pressure. But I could also predict it based off of like the temperature if I wanted to as well, and add multiple different values in there. Then there's criteria. So they just added this. So right now it's just looking at all of the data in this form to make the prediction. But I could set criteria. So I could say only look at the weather that is before a certain date, and I could set that up if I wanted to. So maybe if I knew that some of my data was just going to be outliers and not super useful, then I could filter that out. And then finally, the last step, it just tells me what it's doing. So I'm going to predict the value of rain using air pressure, and the training data that it'll use is all of my records. And then I just hit Add Prediction Field. So then it'll sit there, and at first, if we zoom over on the right, it'll tell me when I look at the field properties, the model training is in progress. So it's figuring out what that AI model should be. It's analyzing all of my data. Sometimes that takes a few minutes. When it's done, like this one which I already had added, then it'll tell me my model training has been done. The accuracy, it will give me a score of which my score was 0.0. So even though pressure is a little correlated, apparently it's not super strongly correlated with rainfall. And so it can actually basically detect like how accurate its predictions are going to be based on, do these different fields actually seem related to each other in some statistically significant way. And so that's how that works. And so basically the version 1.0 of this is that you will put in a bunch of data in your app, it will train on that data, and then as you add new records, it will not account for those in the AI model. If you want it to account for those, you would have to go in and manually click retrain, and then it'll look through all your data again. In the future, we will build this in such a way that as you add records, it'll just automatically update the AI model over time. All right, so that's the prediction field. The next one is the sentiment analysis field. So basically, somebody puts in some text. What this field does is it takes a look at that and it tries to determine if this was negative, positive, or neutral. And so the example we always give is like customer support. You might want to analyze a trend over time. Are my customers hating me more? Are my customers loving me more? Are my customers loving me less, right? Or another cool idea is web scraping. Okay, so let's take a look at how that works. So here is like a support request form, and I could come in here and go, the service I had today was terrible, and it was awful, and you guys are a bunch of charlatans and cheats, right? So I could write something, and the sentiment is correctly identified as negative, but also we get this keyword thing. So this is the next field I was going to talk about. We have a keyword extraction field, which you just drag onto your form, and basically it works the same way as a sentiment analysis. You drag these onto your form and you say, all right, which field of text do we want to analyze here? So then I choose the part where the customer complains at me. And then it extracts what were like the words I talked about in this paragraph. So service, charlatans, cheats, terrible somehow made it in there, guys made it in there. And so the idea behind the keyword extraction is that that could be useful if maybe we want to analyze like a trending topic. So if we have a bunch of customer support tickets coming in and we want to see, is there a certain product that everyone is talking about this month or something's going wrong with it, then we could use the keyword extraction field and then run some reports and find what are those most common words that are showing up here. And you could use that with the web scraping idea as well. So that's how that works. Okay, so then we have the OCR field. So the OCR field lets you extract text from images and PDF files. And so, one idea could be if I want to build an app that can scan like a standardized event badge and extract somebody's name and company or something like that. Or maybe I want to make like a business card scanning app. I could build it in Creator. Or maybe if there's like a standardized paper form that I'm always accepting for some reason, then I could automate data entry by scanning those paper forms and extracting some of the data from it. So that's the idea of the OCR field. So I can demo that real quick. Basically, the OCR field, you drag it onto your form, and then similar to the last ones, I just say, which image field do I want to link this up with? Which image do I want to extract information from? So this is a very simple field, or form. It just has one image field, one OCR. So I'll upload, and let's go with this business card. So this is the business card from American Psycho. I don't know if you guys remember the scene where they're analyzing the business cards, but it's hilarious. So it kind of needs some work. It makes this data a little bit messy, but let's submit that and take a look at our report. So this is the business card, Timothy Bryce, Vice President. We see like a phone number, which is obscured by a finger. We see it's all a little fuzzy. The text is pretty small. People in the back of the room probably can't even read it. And it actually did an okay job considering what it had to do to extract this information. So I don't know why the last name ended up in all caps and the first name did not. But we do see that most of the data on this card was successfully extracted and put into a text field. So you could have like a searchable database of photos of text. All right, so that's the OCR field. And then the last field that I want to talk about is object detection. And so this is a very similar idea, except instead of just extracting text, we can take a look at an image and we can use machine learning to basically figure out, hey, here's a bunch of images that look like footballs. And then our machine learning tool can look at all those and it can go, all right, I think I'll be able to determine if some other image has a football in it now. So what are some practical examples for this? Imagine like in manufacturing or some kind of like field service situation where there's all these different like parts that you might have, and each one of those parts has a different model number or something. Eventually, you could train a machine vision model like this to recognize different types of parts and then to identify those and put those into text, which you can then, report off of. You have a faster way to enter data into an application. Maybe you want some kind of thing where your workers can just take a photo of something and look up what part number that is on their phone. That could be super, super useful. Or you could use it for like auditing purposes. That's another idea. So this one is pretty fun. And basically right now, this can identify 90 different types of objects which we have trained it to do. And we're going to keep adding more over time. But in the future, you will be able to train it on your own data sets. So right now, you can't really get it to identify like the part number of a particular part because we haven't trained it to do that. But in the future, when we allow you to build your own models, if you have hecka photos of whatever part it is, you dump those all into Creator and you click the train button, it could learn how to do it. So right now, I've got a few photos here that I want to test out. So one is this cat Fuji. This is Victoria's cat. Or no, it's Victoria's roommate's cat, I should say. So I can upload that. And we see that it has detected cat and bed in that image. Not too bad. Here's another example. Here's Roger Federer, tennis god. And it actually identifies person, tennis racket, sports ball. Doesn't know that it's a tennis ball, but it does know there's a sport happening. So that's kind of cool. What else? Do we have any other good ones? Oh, this is my favorite one of all. So I took this photo yesterday when Vijay was grilling some young Zoho employees, and you can see they all look super enthused to be here, and they're all super excited to be getting grilled by Vijay. So let's see what it makes of this image. Okay, so person, 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 person. And what's great about this is you'll actually notice it identifies 5 separate people in the image, which is why it has repeated that. And if we look at that image again, I'll bring it back up on screen because I know we all want to keep looking at that. There's only 4 visible faces. So even though Vijay is faced away from the camera, it recognized the body too. So it's not just a face detector. So right now it detects 90 objects. If you're following along on the thing where you can see my slides up close, you can take a look at these, but I'm not going to really sit around. Some of these seem really pertinent to businesses like zebras and giraffes. Others seem less pertinent, like the suitcase. I don't know. So yeah, I already mentioned this. It detects objects we have trained it to detect, but in the future, we may give you the power. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to have to run through it kind of fast, is AI Deluge Tasks. So we have added a bunch of new capabilities into Deluge. These also you cannot access right away, but will be available soon. And so let's take a look at some of these. So one is the ability to parse phone numbers. So as I was talking about earlier, phone numbers could be written a whole bunch of different ways, but we want to extract useful information from that. But it can be difficult because those phone numbers could have different amounts of characters, they could have different amounts of information in them. There could be a mix of non-numeric and numeric characters, if somebody's doing parentheses or dashes. There's all kinds of things that make this difficult to work with when we're writing a script. And so that's why we've introduced this new task called zoho.ai.parsePhoneNumber, and then you pass in your phone number and a country code if you want a country code or if you know it. So I will enter in a phone number. It could be any format into this field, right? And then I'll reformat it to match my actual official phone field. So this gives me like a way to make my data entry more flexible, but my data still stays structured. And then I will also attempt to extract the location from the phone number, 561. Okay, so I'll enter that in. There we go, it works. So as you can see, I did not plant him in the crowd, and I did not hard code this example to work. It does actually work. So it can extract from the area code roughly where somebody is, which is kind of nifty also. So that's how the phone parsing thing works. Parsing addresses. So we already kind of went through this example with the spreadsheet. You could write an address hecka different ways, and that is complicated to work with. And, for all the same reasons as the phone number, pretty much, it can be difficult to parse this manually. You would have to write a lot of lines of script, and it could just be really complicated to account for, did somebody include an area code or a country code or a dash or whatever. So we want more granular data to work with. So with the parse address, the idea is that you could pass in like an address in one big chunk of text, and then it will spit out a map of what are the different pieces in that address in my Deluge script. So if we want to extract like the country or the city or the zip code, then we could do that using this new Deluge task. So if I come back over to my functions, let's take a look at that one. So here's the parse address. So I can just execute this, and so it's very simple. I'm just writing a string function where I pass in an address, I then parse it and return the result. So let's see what that looks like. So I'll execute it, and I'll write the address of this building, which is 4141 Hacienda Drive, Pleasanton, CA 94588, USA. So I can submit that, and then it spits out this lovely little Deluge map, tells me everything went okay, and it breaks it down. So we can see country, USA, road, Hacienda Drive, city, Pleasanton, postcode, house number, state. So it broke everything down. Pretty exciting stuff. All right. So what are some of these other ones? Finding named entities. So this is kind of cool. We can extract like certain types of nouns from a big block of text. So, for instance, with the sentence, "Hello, I'm Sean. My interests are data science and the Internet of Things." If we wanted to extract any person or any skills from that sentence, then we could write a Deluge script which looks like this, and it would then list out skills, data science, comma, Internet of Things, person, Sean. So that could be useful, like, let's say you have some kind of application which you built on Creator, where you want to extract information from a resume and then put that into a database. So that way you can find all of the candidates who talk about a certain thing, and you don't have to read everybody's resume. And you built this on Creator and you call it Zoho Recruit, because you've never heard of Zoho Recruit before, and you could build that. And so this is the list of entities that we can identify from text right now. So if you have some kind of weird mad science app, there's chemicals in there. We can extract dates or times, which is pretty cool, from somebody's just writing a paragraph, regions, all the address things, planets. And I did test this with Pluto. It does count Pluto as a planet. Okay, so another one is predict language. So we write zoho.ai.predictLanguage, and it will tell us a weirdly long decimal of what language it thinks that is. So let's take a look at an example real quick. So I have this predict language function over here with 3 different sentences, and then I'm returning the result. So prediction 1 is going to be related to sentence 1. So this presentation is going very well. We can execute that. And it says prediction probabilities, English, 1. So basically it's telling me a score between 0 and 1. 1 meaning I am absolutely sure what language this is, and 0 meaning I have no idea what language this is. And so it's telling me, yeah, that's definitely English. But I can change this. Let's do number 2. I'm not going to try reading that. Spanish, but somebody who speaks Spanish maybe could. So it's 86% sure that is Spanish. Cool. We can also do, like languages that use a different alphabet. So this one is Arabic at the end. That will also work as well. Okay. We also offer sentiment analysis as a Deluge task. So we could pass in some statement into our script and then get a prediction of, is this positive, neutral, negative, and then also we can get a score of how positive, neutral, or negative Zia thinks that particular sentence or paragraph is. There's also OCR, or text recognition, as a Deluge task. And so basically the way this works is you could just use that like text recognition field, or you could just write a script, and then just anytime somebody puts something in an image field, you could in the background just use this task, and it works the same way. And basically you just put in, input dot whatever my image field is, and that's all I have to pass to it. And then there's also different model types that I can pass as parameters of this function. So depending on what I am anticipating somebody's image to be, I could change the model type and maybe increase the accuracy of it. So if I know that it's just going to be an image of like a document every time, I could say, all right, it's going to be a document, and then that'll optimize how it scans the image. So if you guys want to know about these AI tasks, this documentation is already available online, and you can check it out. I strongly recommend it. And that's all I've got. Okay, thank you.